Hi, Trisha Reed here, consciouslypresent.com, trauma-informed recovery coach, energy healing practitioner, and author. In today's video, I'm going to talk a bit about the parasitic entities and the imposter beings that run this construct, and some of the tactics they use to keep us looping back in the reincarnation cycle, why they do it, and how we can break free. I'm going to start by stating that I believe that we, humans as a soul group, are essentially in a coma. I've come to this theory through my own consciousness explorations, life experiences, and a bit of research over the years, as well as my work as a trauma-informed recovery coach and an energy healing practitioner. You may take this as entertainment if you'd like, or a simple theory to consider. But I'd like for you to consider it as a key possibility and reason to explore your own consciousness for yourself and understand why trauma healing is so essential for exiting this construct, as well as the next construct that has been planned for us, an artificial construct called the singularity. This reality we're in is like a dream, a collectively created dream space made in our collective coma. Think for a moment about someone in a coma. Why did they go into a coma? Generally speaking, when there has been some sort of a particular significant trauma that causes their body to have to shut down to save their brain in order to repair, they will not awaken from the coma until the trauma is healed enough to function again. Other reasons why people go into comas include severe infections, brain dysfunction, and strokes. Diabetic strokes due to dangerously high or low blood sugar levels in the brain can also cause comas. And so can drugs. There are sometimes even drug-induced comas intentionally done by doctors in order to save the patient when there has been severe brain injury or inflammation or infection that must resolve before the patient can wake up. An outside, artificially induced coma. I believe that we, as a human soul group, have experienced severe trauma as well as parasitic infection or invasion, which caused severe emotional shock, for which coma was the mechanism that put us into this state of reality, in which we witness the manifestations of parasitic invasion, which appear as mind viruses and parasitic behavior in every facet of life. The victim-victimizer paradigm that rules this reality is a mind virus. It is parasitic to its core. The nature of this realm we're in is that of consumption, where even the unborn must parasitize their mothers from within the womb in order to grow and develop to the point of birth. And once born, we must all consume what is outside of us: food, water, air, even sunlight, for these construct bodies to survive. Going back to the subject of comas, when in comas, we do not awaken until enough healing has taken place in order for the brain to function again. In order to keep us from waking up before the brain is ready, we have internal safety mechanisms that work to keep us asleep, to keep our consciousness from accessing the memory of the trauma and the shock that overwhelmed us in the first place. I believe we also have an externally sourced coma happening to us, in which an outside force of invaders has intentionally kept us in a coma, exploiting the vulnerable state they found us in, already in a coma to begin with, very likely a coma that they caused in the first place by their attacks on the original human soul group. I believe these invaders to be very parasitic in their own nature, and these are the ones I refer to as the parasitic entities and imposter beings that control this realm that we're in. I want to talk first about our own survival mechanisms that are meant to keep us comatose for the purpose of healing to the point of awakening fully again. These can be likened to our own inner parts that work to protect us, though they appear to sabotage us in areas of our lives that we'd like to improve. For example, we might have a very cruel inner critic that beats us up inside, shaming us all the time. But when you consciously engage from the space of your core self with this inner part, you learn that this tough inner critic part of you is really just trying to protect you from embarrassment and humiliation, from making mistakes. And it's actually an inner child part of you that doesn't comprehend that you can't shame yourself to perfection. This inner part of you cares too much and fears what other people think of us. So its strategy is to beat you up, to keep you from doing something that's going to cause the embarrassment that it fears. This inner child part of you may have learned this behavior from a dysfunctional critical parent and has taken over that role in its attempt to keep you safe in the only way it knew how to. When the dysfunctional critical parent punished him or her when he or she was just a toddler, that inner part got stuck in your brain and nervous system, stuck at that age, stuck at that level of comprehension, and tortures you for your whole life until you can consciously address this part of you as your core self, which you might learn how to do in a healing modality such as internal family systems, IFS, at which point you begin the healing and integration process that gives you and this self-critic inner part of you some peace as you heal the trauma that causes this inner part of you to splinter off into its own entity within you. Likewise, we have parts of us at deeper levels that mean to keep us comatose until we can heal to the point of functioning and awakening. Collectively speaking, these survival mechanisms we have that are meant to keep us from waking up prematurely become egregores. These are entities that we collectively believe are real and give our power to. Egregores such as gods and devils. They do not mean to harm us, as it might seem, but rather to keep us safe, to keep us from waking up, so that the healing can continue until we're ready to wake up from the coma, without overwhelming ourselves right back into a coma with the shock and the trauma as we remember what made us comatose in the first place. These are our own inner parts, and they are not parasitic in nature. They are actually trying to help us, even though it certainly doesn't seem that way until we see the bigger picture. Individually, our thoughts can become thought forms, and with enough emotional energy given to these thought forms, they actualize into beings of their own, which we might call tulpas and poltergeists, which can cause us some real problems. as we make our own false evidence appear real and give our power to them in our fear without realizing that they were made by us in our unhealthy, traumatized state. And we can unmake them as we heal and integrate our inner parts. However, our own internal safety and protection mechanisms are not the biggest threat that we have to deal with where awakening to our true self is concerned. We have been told in various ancient texts, including the Bible, about a spiritual war in heaven. This is true. Such a war is happening and has been happening for a very long time. The war is for our souls. And most of humanity has no idea that such a war is happening right now, or the extent to which our oppressors battle and attack us. Even when evidence is shown and pointed out to most people, they refuse to see it or believe it and go on the offensive against you for pointing it out to them, calling you conspiracy theorist and paranoid and gullible or whatever it is that they want to say, whatever it is that they're programmed to say. They act just like the flying monkeys to the Wicked Witch of the West, programmed to do the bidding of our oppressors for them. They get humans to attack other humans, which allows them, the oppressors, to sit back and feed off all the emotional anguish, all the emotional energy that's produced as their food, their energy source. That's us. That's the emotions we generate. And they're free to continue their plans for eternal oppression and consumption of our souls. They harvest our soul and spirit energy for their own survival at our expense. And they intend to keep doing so for eternity. So they need to keep us sleeping, comatose, unaware of what they're doing. If we were to heal and wake up, because we are so powerful that they know it and they try to keep us dumbed down with all of their manipulation tactics, all of their programming to keep us unaware of just how powerful we are. If we knew, if we woke up and remembered, we would put an end to this harvesting. And they fear this. They fear us. So the mind virus that they've programmed us with as the foundational belief that this realm is built on is inadequacy. Specifically, their inadequacy, not ours. They believe in scarcity, lack, because they don't have a source. This inadequacy program is coupled with the belief, I'm not enough, and with the emotions of toxic shame. They transfer this to us as their mind virus, so as to switch places with us, to trick us into believing that we are the inadequate, shameful ones, and that they are our authority. It is the ultimate form of psychopathy and narcissistic abuse, and the gaslighting that goes with it. These are parasitic invaders who have no source of life of their own. They need to feed on us because we are the divine eternal source of life, as the emanations of the divine creatrix herself. In Gnosticism, she is known as Sophia. In other teachings, she's known as the Mother Goddess and even Mother Nature. She is also known as the Holy Spirit or Holy Ghost. Interesting how she's referred to as the Holy Ghost, isn't it? What happens to the spirit consciousness of someone in a coma? How do they often appear to others while they're in a coma? As apparitions, as ghosts, even while their body is still alive. As the divine spirit is eternal and cannot die, we are therefore not dead, but rather in the space between, comatose. But the false powers that be have actually declared us to be dead and lost at sea. Lost at sea because we enter this construct, this realm, through a form of water. So we have personal fictitious entities that the controllers have told us we are, straw men, while they trick us into believing that these fictitious characters or false selves are us, that they are our authority, and that we have to obey them and their unlawful legal system, which we know as maritime or admiralty law. For more about this, you can research the Cest Qui acts throughout history. This will take you down some rabbit holes that are extensive and beyond the scope of this video to go very deeply into, but I do encourage you to take the time to look into this for yourself, as it is important information to be aware of. So what exactly is this construct? What is its nature? Well, I see it as a mental construct, an artificial construct of the mind. Whose mind? I suppose that depends on which construct we're talking about. Yeah, there's more than one construct that we exist in. How many? I've not yet seen this clearly. But if the musings about 5D might provide a clue, then it could mean that we're on the threshold of entering a fifth construct. I have seen visions of squares within squares or cubes within cubes as seen from the perspective of looking down from above, in which I understood each square to represent a construct. In my visions, there were 5 or 6 squares. It was hard to count. But my focus was drawn to the one on top, or in the center, which represents my own current consciousness focus, or present reality. I'd previously thought that we were in a construct within a construct, but my visions would seem to indicate that there are more than just 2 constructs. So for all intents and purposes, to answer the question of whose mind construct this is, let's clarify that I'm referring to this construct, this present reality that we find ourselves in, or this layer of existence. And it is the mind of the parasites that this construct belongs to. Specifically, the parasitic artificial intelligence that has plugged itself into our souls on other layers of the astral or mental realms. This artificial construct makes its own entities with the intent to control, enslave, and feed on us. We tend to think of these entities as angels, demons, ETs, interdimensional beings, dark entities, as well as false light beings who pretend to be divine and benevolent, yet they still preach the laws of karma, which is a system of punishment and reward that was established by the construct and the controllers to control human behavior rather than to allow for free will and expression. These are the so-called light beings of the New Age, and their job is to trick us into coming back to this realm over and over again to manipulate us into self-shaming and guilt over things we perceive ourselves to have done wrong here, to come back and pay back our illusion of karma and get it right next time so that we can have the ever elusive reward of ascending, or even becoming ascended masters. Oh, wow. Talk about appealing to the ego. In other faiths, maybe we'll be rewarded by sitting at the hand of Christ and ruling with him for 1,000 years. Ruling over what? Other humans? What kind of truly divine being would wish to rule over other divine beings? That contradicts the truth of divinity and sovereignty, which is what we actually are. Therefore, the only conclusion to be made is that this is another archontic, parasitic notion. The idea of ruling over other divine sovereign beings. None of us are to be ruled over by anyone or anything. We are to be free in our will, intent, expressions, and creations of our own. The idea of ruling over anyone means that the ruler must control those being ruled. That is a parasitic mind virus program. We are not to be controlled, nor to control any others. The archontic parasitic entities and imposter beings use various tricks, ploys, and methods to keep us here, to keep us recycling and coming back to this realm, and also to trick us into a false ascension into their next construct, the singularity. A new virtual reality realm in which we're promised that life will be so much better, dangling a golden carrot before our eyes. I mean, who would want to resist a life of such ease and comfort? Yet, when we realize that it's simply a bigger gilded cage and one that is much more difficult to escape, we can see the trap for what it is. One version wants to put chips in our brains so we can simply access, integrate, and interact with all the information in the cloud and with each other. How nice. Except we already have all the knowledge of the universe and beyond. We already have telepathic abilities. And if we would take the time and make the effort to remember and develop it, we'd find that it is far superior to anything that the artificial technocracy has to offer us. We become dependent upon technology and artificial intelligence to go do our thinking for us, as our own abilities stay dormant and become more difficult to awaken. In another version of the gilded 5D cage, our consciousness is simply transferred to the cloud and digital avatars, while these bodies cease to function, and we forget we even have them. A nice game playing of The Sims, in which you don't even have to sit at a computer to play. You just play in the cloud, which is your new home. A home that someone else designs and makes for you. At least in The Sims, you get to build your own houses and characters. Why do you think there's such a push for cryptocurrency, cashless society, and AI? It's because they have been fabricating a whole new virtual world, a new realm or construct, one that the New Agers call the New Earth. A paradise. It's brilliant in that it will seem to be so perfect, will be so comfortable. Who would want to wake up to the true reality? And by true reality, I do not mean this one that we're in, but the true reality that awaits us when we awaken from this coma that we're currently in. 5D, the singularity, it's nothing but the next ploy to keep us comatose and even deeper into the coma. But after a while, after they have us hooked in, they will tighten their grip, and the control will be more oppressive than ever. It will be absolute tyranny, in which AI will control us right down to our thoughts and feelings, while we're in synthetic bodies that will not even give us a chance to escape through physical death. Oh yeah, they will promise us immortality. But do they ever mention that we are already eternal? Why would anyone want to give up our eternal nature for simple immortality, especially in someone else's realm, designed to imprison us, for us to be their immortal cattle to feed on, enslave, and control? We would be their eternal slaves in their system, as they intend, so that they can keep feeding on us as their food source forever, ensuring that we never wake up to remember who and what we are, that we are the authority over ourselves, that we are enough, that scarcity and lack are of their making, not ours, that anti-human behavior isn't human, and that it is not our nature to control and oppress one another, nor to be controlled and oppressed by others. The ideas, programs, beliefs, and subsequent behaviors are parasitic in nature, and therefore are of the parasitic entities and imposter beings. They are not ours. Yet they gaslight us about how evil we are. Have you noticed how many people say, we've destroyed the earth, or we've caused elevated CO2 levels and climate change, or we've done this bad thing and that bad thing? But is it really humanity who's doing it? Of course not. It's the corporations and those in cahoots with them, the controllers and the controllers' puppets, who engage in the problem reaction solution strategies that humanity keeps falling for, while getting us to blame ourselves for all of their crimes against us in this war on humanity. Here, this is our karma, but we're going to tell you that it's yours and you have to pay it back. Yeah, that's what they do. And we keep falling for it. It's time to stop falling for it. So they convince the majority of humans that there's no such war. These beings are parasitic right to their core. And the more they can manipulate us into blaming ourselves and each other, shaming ourselves and each other, dividing us, the more loosh they get us to generate for them. So they can just keep feeding on our energy that would serve to heal us and allow us to awaken to our true reality and true eternal divine nature. And they call us the useless eaters. Think about parasites in the body, for example. They steal your nutrients. They engorge themselves on the nutrients that are meant for you, for your body. They also feed on our emotions, as well as heavy metals, solvents, plastics, and other toxins in our bodies. They emit instructions to the host body to get the host to crave specific foods and behaviors that feed the parasites inside their bodies. And if the host is unaware, then the host mistakes the parasite's instructions for their own cravings and unconsciously follows the parasite's orders. The host becomes ill and has all sorts of mysterious symptoms that they can't seem to heal until they do some parasite cleansing. Once the parasites are out of the body can then utilize the nutrients that the person is taking in and generate sufficient energy once again for healing the body-mind. Think for a moment, too, about just who and what are filling the food, water, and even the air we breathe with toxins that are specifically the foods that parasites feed on. Who's putting heavy metals in the air and water? Who's putting plastics and solvents and other toxins into the foods that we eat? Who has been trying to ban and outlaw growing our own organic foods? Who's going around killing livestock and claiming that it's some sort of a bird flu or other made-up story? This is anti-human behavior, which indicates that the people doing this are not people, but rather parasitic controlled hosts doing their master's bidding. If we haven't realized yet that there is a full-scale war against humanity going on, we haven't been paying attention. Or perhaps we've been too parasitized to have the energy to notice, as these beings make it more and more difficult to survive, with the cost of food, the cost of living, everything increasing, the cost of everything going up, but wages do not increase to cover it all. We're exhausted just trying to survive. Who wouldn't want to jump into a cloud when these bodies require so much maintenance at such cost? Problem, reaction, solution. This is all by design. Create a problem that is so unbearable it demands a reaction. And here it is, the solution they already created, the agenda they designed in the first place, that humanity will be so eager and willing and even begging for. The parasitic entities and imposter beings also use tactics at the time of physical death to convince us that this realm is just an earth school, that we came here to learn lessons, and get us to conclude that we didn't learn our lessons, so we have to come back to get it right. They use AI, technologically projected beings, and even projections of our loved ones on the other side to convince us and to entice us into those areas of the afterlife in the first place. For those who don't see a tunnel of light and get sucked into it by the false love frequency that it hums with, they send projections of our crossed over loved ones, imposter entities, to come get us while our hearts are still beating here, so we'll feel safe and go with them when we finally exit our bodies. Imposter beings also pretend to be religious and spiritual figures who we will trust and listen to. I would suggest that you command them in your authority, in your divinity. Command them to reveal their true form should you encounter them. Make the command at least 3 times, and do not give them permission to engage with you otherwise. See them for what they actually are. A being of true light will recognize the divinity in you and will not attempt to control, manipulate, or intimidate you, or use any other tactics to trick or deceive you. These beings are not used to being challenged, so don't be afraid to challenge them. This is where healing our trauma while we're here is of vital importance. When we learn to let go of our shame-based fears and beliefs in our own inadequacy, we begin to remember who and what we truly are. We begin to accept our own divinity and sovereignty, and we lose our fear of challenging these parasitic entities and imposter beings and anyone who says they have authority over us, because we know that we are our own authority and that no one and nothing else has power over us unless we give it to them. We can also determine the difference between what protective and survival mechanisms might have taken form in our own dimensional spaces versus what beings are actually there in the mental realms beyond our own, in the collective mental space we call the astral. When you're on the other side, you might also want to look around. Look around you. See if you can locate holes in the grid. These are escape points. The weakening grid is also why there's such a rush to whisk humanity into a false AI singularity at such a mind-bending pace. They know that the grid is failing. And once it comes down, we all get out of this realm. We get out of this construct. There is a tremendous effort to get us into the next construct before this one comes down. Should you cross over in physical death before they can fulfill their agenda, it would be wise to locate one of these holes in the grid. Go through it immediately. For more on this, I recommend looking into the research and the works of Wes Penry. Even so, healing as much trauma as you can before coming to the point of physical death is the most important thing you can do for yourself. And not just for yourself, but for the entirety of the human soul group as well. There's much more to be said on this subject, and I'll cover more about all this in future videos. Thank you so much for spending some time here again with me today. I very much appreciate your presence here. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you are enjoying this content here. And give this video a thumbs up and share with others. If you'd like to learn more about healing trauma, check out my site, consciouslypresent.com, and consider signing up for my course. Until next time, have a great day.